people on YouTube explaining how you need to kind of brand yourself. And so I had called mine initially like Inside True Crime, but then I've switched it. Then very quickly I switched it to Matthew Cox Inside True Crime. So because there are people that are watching videos where literally I'm saying I'm talking for 5% of the video.
Yeah.
It's 95% the guest, but they're watching it and half the comments are about me. And I said nothing. So I get it. People, for some reason, they get to like your personality. They like you. They follow you. They support you, which initially sounds silly until you really need that support. You know what I'm saying? And then you're like, you feel like, wow, you really start appreciating it. Where before it seemed silly to me until I was in that position where it's like, this is all I do now. So how, I'd be a pretty big jerk to still think it's silly when I'm living off it and I do appreciate it.
Yeah,
so.
I think the word you're looking for is, silly is definitely the word that comes to mind, but what we're really reaching for is humble. It's a humbling thing.
Yeah.
To know that people watch you, to know that people can connect with you, to know that they can relate to you, and that when they hear your guest,
right,
they themselves are putting themselves in your shoes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I think is that's what podcasting has taught me. It's a humbling privilege to get to reach that many people.
No, privilege. It's not even, it's definitely privilege.
Yeah.
Privilege. Yeah. Well, keep in mind too, and I've told you, I think I've even said this to you, it was like 6 months before I left prison, like I was laying on my cot in prison thinking, how am I going to pay my bills?
So this is what's crazy about you, right, man? So there's a concept at CIA that we call the availability heuristic. Right? Heuristic is just a fancy word for cognitive bias, and cognitive bias is just a fancy word for assumption. But there's this heuristic that ties itself to availability because it basically means that you're always comparing yourself against the most similar thoughts, the most similar memories that you have that are of recent memory available to you, right? Availability heuristic. So for example, I was talking to my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is my mother-in-law. So you fill in all of your own words there, right? She's almost 70 years old. And she's talking about like how she sees the world, but she doesn't realize that everything she's saying is her opinion. Right. It's not fact. It's just her opinion, right? She thinks that she's going to live to be 125 years old. And she thinks that she's going to live to be so old because, my aunt lived to be 105 and my grandmother lived to be 97. And, my aunt's grandmother lived to be 102, whatever else, right? And I'm like, all she's doing is listing people that fulfill in her mind her own desire to live to be old.
Right.
She's not even thinking about all the people in her life that died at 60, 65, 70. Right. She's for sure not considering statistically that most Americans don't live past the age of 90.
Right.
So she's leaning on what's known as an availability heuristic. She's immediately referencing the exceptions to the rule. And that's what she's availably pulling from. And that's the same thing that you're often doing when you're remembering your time in prison, right? You're reaching back to this very limited period of your time, of your life, where you
felt significant, but okay.
I'm sure it was very significant to you, but the significance that it was to you does not actually make it significant in terms of your capabilities.
Right. Well,
it was your awesome capabilities, let's be honest. It was your capabilities that made you come up with a crime that kept from being identified for so long until it was finally identified and you were, $12 million in?
15. But
not many people can steal $15 million and not get caught.
In fact, no one. If you throw me, then no one can do it and not get caught. But I was going to say the other thing is too, I'm also pulling from my own, because you basically are stunted when you enter prison. So I was pulling from my prior experience where YouTube had been out for 2 years. I don't think I'd ever been on it. There were no podcasters. Podcast was not even a thing. That wasn't even named. It wasn't even a name.
Yep.
So it was it was developed once I had been in prison for 2 or 3 years. I didn't know what it was.
Yep.
So, and the fact that people would become fascinated with criminals to a point where they could actually turn that into a living wasn't a thing. So my whole thing when I'm getting out of prison is I'm thinking, you're a scumbag. Everybody thinks you're a scumbag. They're going to have, the only thing I know about the internet is they're very quickly going to realize you're a scumbag. What are you going to do? You're going to work at McDonald's. You're going to rent someone's spare room. You're going to be humble. You're going to be appreciative. You're going to keep your head down like that. These are all the things I'm telling myself. Then I get out and I realize like there are guys that have been in prison 30 years getting out doing YouTube channels talking about prison stabbings and riots.
Yeah.
And they've got 500,000 subscribers and they're making a living doing this.
Well, when you first contacted me, I think the thing that really had stopping power for me was that you were super connected to like these creative artistic endeavors. You were painting, you were writing, you had a blog that had just incredible true crime stories on it.
Oh, yeah, right.
Like that's where you were when I met you. And that was there when that spoke to me more than whatever criminal sentence you were given. Because, I mentioned this to you before, right? CIA officers, as much as we are also like rejected and denounced by huge chunks of society, one of the few groups out there that we actually make friends with, that we actually connect with, are criminals.
Right.
Current and former criminals. Partly because the only difference between a CIA officer and a criminal is that what we do is sanctioned crime.
Right.
We're trained how to execute criminal acts and execute them on foreign soil to the advancement of American national security. Criminals have to go through the school of hard knocks.
Right.
Take a risk, take a chance, and they prey on usually other Americans.
Right.
Right. So there are differences between us, but when it comes to the mindset, the risk tolerance, the creative solutions to problems that nobody even faces, and for sure, questions that people aren't willing to ask themselves, right? You have asked yourself those questions. You have taken those risks, and you've also done your service for your time,
right,
for being caught and captured and for recognizing that you've had to change your life. But that creative element of you, right? The writer / painter / podcaster, like that exists in all of us too. Like former CIA officers, that's how we cope with the terrible things that we've done in the past. When we get a chance to separate ourselves from our acts, our operations, we oftentimes turn to the arts. That's how my company started too. I started by writing.
Yeah, you had mentioned that. One, that as a criminal, like you have somebody to prepare these documents for you to help you along the way and explain. Where as a criminal, you have to figure these things out through getting arrested or other criminals, or just figuring it out. Will this work? What's the worst that'll happen? And figuring out how to get the documents, how to get these things, how to get an ID, how to get a passport, and possibly getting arrested every single time. But
you created your own fraudulent documents. I had a team of artists create mine.
Right.
Like, it's incredible, dude. Like I had a driver's license that was sanctioned by the state that it was fraudulently created in.
Right.
I had a passport that was sanctioned by the U.S. Department of State. It's completely different in terms of you didn't have anything like that. And what's great, I also didn't make $15 million along the road.
You're on your way.
But it's stunning to me to think, because I know how nerve-wracking it was for me.
CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. I built a free 3-minute test to help reveal to you exactly what your secret hidden superpower is. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, take the test, and start using your spy superpower to stay ahead of 99% of people.
To cross an international border with a professionally crafted fake passport. I cannot imagine how stressful it must be to actually try to commit fraud face to face with a bank or with a police officer looking over your shoulder, whatever else that you had to do. It's powerful because I know what it felt like to do it my way. I can't imagine what it feels like to do it your way. And the average American who has neither experience, it must be a seriously I was just thinking to myself, the difference is that if I got flagged going through customs and something happened, I'm going to get arrested and brought back to the United States, and I'm going to go to jail. If I'm and I don't know where you were or anything, but if I'm in Saudi Arabia or wherever, and you get caught with a fake passport, like. It could be bad. Things could go really bad. You don't go back to the United States.
No,
that's true.
That's true. And it's I have a friend, Pete, one time. What did he say? He was talking about the cartel, like doing content on the cartel. He said, you just got to be careful. He said, because, if something happens and I go, I said, I said, what? I said, what am I going to do? I said that somebody's going to kill me. I said, I've lived a pretty good life. He said, no, it's not them killing you. It's how they're going to kill you. And I thought, he said, if they just shoot you walking out your front door, that's a blessing, because that's not what they're going to do. And I just remember the way he said it so seriously, like the hair on my arm stood up. And he said, bro, it would be horrendous. You'd be praying for death. And I just thought, Jesus, like, so worst case happened to me, I go to jail. A CIA agent is facing a vastly different scenario. So, in some ways, I'm in a much better position.
No, I don't disagree with you. And, it's funny that you mentioned a story like that, because what I've discovered since getting out, since becoming more public with my own agency background, is that people really don't, especially American people, the average American out there doesn't realize how despicable the world outside of our borders really is, right? Like cartels literally will torture you. Right? Terrorist groups will torture you, not because there's any strategic benefit from it,
right?
But just because they want to send a message. It's their version of psychological operations. It's a number of different things, right? Not to mention the fact that they're oftentimes, like, these are not well-educated, balanced, emotionally stable people who gather into cartels and gather into terrorist organizations or gather into extremist groups. These are desperate people who live hard lives, who learn to live by a code of ethics that's defined by the organization that they come into. So, the idea that you or I might ever actually inflict prolonged pain on somebody, it's difficult to even imagine coming from the American mindset. And it's fascinating to me, because oftentimes Americans will get all up in arms about saving whales and about protecting animals from makeup testing. And we'll get upset about immigrants being shipped from Texas to New York.
Right.
Like, when you compare those to what's happening in Mexico City, like, it's insane that people don't realize how protected and privileged and humane we are, and that we're subdividing and limiting and arguing with each other over, minuscule things, and we're calling it humane, and it's the definition of humane is so much wider than what we consider.
I was going to say, in the, I periodically I'll get somebody on that will be either an ATF agent or DEA agent or Raymond Hicks. He's a sheriff's deputy who was in the is it Broward County? Broward County. He was in Broward County Sheriff's Deputy. They had taken him and they were using him to do controlled buys, because he grew up in the streets, right? So, it's hard for a normal cop to come off like a drug dealer. He's even if it's a black guy, right? Like, if he's a black guy raised upper middle class, drug dealers, they talk to you for 5 minutes, go, absolutely not. Like, you're trying to talk this, but I can feel it's not you. Intuition is insane, right? So Hicks goes out and he's one of these guys selling drugs, and they're busting people, but the other deputies are stealing money. Like, they're taking money from the drug dealers. So he starts to speak out about it, starts to complain about it, starts to make waves, and they go, oh no, you're a problem. They send him to go back and work in the jail, which is where he'd come from. He said, I didn't care about that, but he had made statements where you guys should be in jail. Not some of these drug dealers. Like, you guys are just as bad as them. You're stealing from them. You're beating them up. You're what ends up happening is they end up basically including him on a case. It's like 700 kilos of cocaine or something. It's ridiculous. And he ends up going to trial and wins. They then arrest him again and indict him for something else. This time that he goes to trial again and wins. He lost everything. Like, he lost, his savings, his house, everything through this process. He was actually arrested again, and keep in mind, every time they raided his house. So, and in the comments section, guys are saying, we're the most corrupt country. We're the most, and they keep it. And I'm always in there going, okay, look, there's corruption. Any system, you could design the perfect system, but the moment you put humans in charge of it, there is going to be issues. There's going to be corruption. People are going to take advantage of it. So, and they're, our justice system is the most corrupt. Stop. It's not the most corrupt. Okay. Is there corruption? Yes. Yeah. Is there an old boys network in some situations? Absolutely. But there's just, it's certainly not the most, it's I actually, look, I just didn't. I honestly think maybe I met one or two people that it was questionable that maybe they were innocent. And I know one guy that he's innocent. He should have got some time for stupidity. Just for putting yourself in this situation and being stupid, you should have known better. I don't think he was technically, what he did was illegal, but you're an idiot. You should have done 2 years just for being stupid. So, but still innocent. Honestly, other than that, the only real disparities I've seen is in sentencing. You're not innocent. You didn't deserve 15 years. I read your whole case. I read the transcript. You should have gotten 15 years. You probably should have got a year or two. But is that corruption? Like, no, maybe it's slightly unfair and it's not, but in comparison to other countries, bro, come on.
Yeah.
This is people in America, there's no idea how brutal it is out there.
It is. It's wild. It's wild that in countries like Thailand, in countries like UAE, in countries like Saudi Arabia, you can't speak out and say a negative comment. Even privately, it's legally culpable to say a negative comment about a royal family, right? The royal family of Thailand, the Saudi royals, or one of the 7 royal families that are inside UAE. To even say something negative about them makes you legally culpable. And the prisons, I mean, you can imagine what a prison looks like in UAE. It's not like the prisons here in the United States where people are given, a closed space where the barred windows are still windows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's pretty wild. And it's also interesting because you were just talking about the sentencing being the area of discrepancy, right? I don't think people understand how our justice system works. It is a system that pushes all authority to the judges, right? Judges have independent authority over their court, and judges can't even agree with other judges. It is the exact opposite of objective. It is a subjective world. They get to interpret the law. They get to apply the law. They get to do it in their district, their municipality. If they're a Supreme Court judge, they do it federally. And I didn't realize this until recently either. Judges are oftentimes given lifetime judgeship.
Yeah.
Lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, so if you get accepted to be a judge at whatever age, 35, 45, 55, whatever it might be, you never have to leave. It's not publicly elected. Yeah. After that, like you're a judge forever. So you're
not really concerned about public opinion because it's almost impossible to get rid of me.
Exactly. It's insane, man. And that's the justice system, which is one of the 3 legs that our entire American system is built on, right? The judicial branch. It's one of those things to me that's both a superpower and a vulnerability in our system because we have that process.
Right.
Where you do have to earn the right to be a judge. You do have to be publicly elected.
And it's reviewed. There's a review process and a review process and a review process up to the Supreme Court if they want to hear it, because they don't always have people like, oh, go to the Supreme Court. They don't have to hear it.
Yeah.
But there's a review process all the way up through the whole thing. The only problem is it does take a long time. It is cumbersome, and you may have to sit in jail for 5 years until your situation gets rectified. But the fact that there is the possibility of it being cleared up,
a system at all,
right?
Yeah.
Right. It's funny. There was a guy, Ephraim Deveroli, had told me one time. This goes against what you're saying. He said they can do anything they want to you as long as they give you a system to appeal it. And I was like, oh wow! Like the way he said that, I was like, wow. He's a think about it. Like, oh, you have a problem with that? Well, here, fill out this form.
Yep.
You can appeal it. It goes to the next step. Oh, you didn't like our opinion? Great, go to the next step. So he's like, they'll drag it out. By the time maybe you'll win, he said, but 2 years later, you've already done your sentence.
Yeah,
ours not perfect.
No, I agree. And what's wild to me is that what I've discovered in my kind of CIA experience looking at the United States is we are very much a country of conviction. We're looking for and rewarding the most convicted people, the people who can show the most tenacity, the most determination, the most diligence. And all of our systems are created to eat away at each of those things, right? So that the person who doesn't have follow through, the person who isn't tenacious, the person who doesn't have the courage to keep pushing on, the person who gives up, that's our favorite kind of person. That's inside the United States. Everybody loves the person who gives up. Because the person who gives up just pays a little extra money to have somebody else fix the problem. The person who gives up pays their taxes on time and at the maximum rate. The person who gives up just follows the rule of law and crosses at the crosswalk. The person who gives up is the person that everybody gets to walk on. And We raise people to get walked on. Public school raises you to be walked on. Church raises you to get walked on. Like, we live in a culture that's literally propagating the idea that to be a good citizen, you have to shut up and take it. And then the people who don't, the few that don't, and the few who show the resilience year after year, decade after decade, to not get stepped on and to not put up with shit, those few people end up being wildly successful, and they become the target of criticism and anger from everybody else. But by then, they've already gotten accustomed to being yelled at all the time. So they just roll with it, right? That's look at your Steve Jobses, look at your Elon Musks, look at your Donald Trumps, look at all these fantastic celebrity names.
Right.
But then you don't even have to look at the biggest names. The people out there who are making millions of dollars a year in silence because they're the kings of their industry, the king of the tire industry, the king of the motor oil industry, the king of the foam wall industry. They all have tops of their industries. And inside their industry, I guarantee you, they are hated and despised by everybody else who's just trying to scratch by and make a living.
I was going to say, I had a guy one time who was telling me we were talking about the middle class or something. He actually was kind of like almost mocking the middle class. And I was like, bro, like I wish I had been middle class to be honest, I wouldn't have had to go to jail. I wouldn't have lost all the things that I lost, and all because of my fault. But because it's like the middle class, they are the backbone, you know what I'm saying? But you're right. But you're absolutely right. Like, that is what, and I always joked about this, about any type of program in prison is designing you is they're educating you to go work at Walmart. Yeah. Like, it just like public school, they're educating you to go get a lower middle class or middle class job. Like, that's really what high school is. Hey, by the time you're done with high school, you are educated to be lower middle class. You know what I'm saying? Like, still middle class, but not on the high end. So that's what they want, because they need that massive tax base to follow the rules and pay in everything. And, and as horrible as this might sound, God bless them.
It's critical.
It's critical. Absolutely. It's exact. We would fail as a country without them. And it just didn't work for me.
Well, and this is what I think is so interesting, because as much as people might want to hate the fact that what we're saying is true, the other thing that's also true is that the reason we are the world's superpower, the reason we are the top economic engine in the world,
right,
is because we have created this massive
class,
class of cogs.
Yeah.
Right? Cogs that are dissatisfied, angry, frustrated. They bitch about it when they go home. They struggle for 35 years and they complain, but they still do it.
You know what's funny though?
You go to any other foreign country out there, and what you'll find is that the lack of cog-based education becomes a massive drain on their economy.
Right. And they would die to be in that position in the United States. What's funny is, it's so funny because it's just circumstantial, because the same people that are middle class today, or even lower middle class, 100 years ago, like the Rockefellers, these people are all living better than them. They say, oh no, they don't have as much money. It doesn't matter. They have dental care. They're not going to. They have medical. They're going to live twice as long. I forget which. Like, one of the Rockefellers lost like 3 kids. I don't know if it was a Rockefeller, but it was one of these guys that, like, he lost like 3 kids and his wife, like, to diseases that now you go to the doctor and they'd be like, here, take these pills for 10 days. You're good. What are you talking about?
And they won't, because we'll only take our pills for 7 days. And then we'll feel better because we know more than the doctor, right? It's insane, because you're exactly right? Dental technology of the 1950s, dental technology of the 1920s pales in comparison to what we get right now on your employer's health insurance plan.
Yeah. Well, and YouTube, entertainment, like across the board, your life is so substantially better. But people, it's because it's so available and cheap that they don't appreciate it.
Yeah, they don't understand it.
You go to prison for 10 years, get out and be like, I'm walking around with my cell phone like, oh my God, this is amazing.
There are boobs right here.
I could watch anything. And I could find anything.
That's the availability heuristic, man. That's exactly what we're talking about. When you're surrounded and inundated by cheap entertainment and boxed wine and anything that you could possibly want, it's all available to you. Right. So then you think it's something that it's not. You take it for granted. Yeah. You assume it's either less important or more important than it really is. Like, that's all part of that cognitive bias that distorts your point of view.
Well, I have guys with YouTube, since this is something we have in common, with the YouTube thing. It's funny. I'll meet these guys that are like, oh, you're doing a YouTube channel? Oh, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what else do you do? I'm like, no, it's like paying like all my bills. Like, it's great. It's actually working. Like, it's working. And they're like, oh, well, that must be nice. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, but I didn't put up a video, bro.
Yeah.
Like I had a plan.
Yep.
I had a long-term plan.
And you grind.
And listen, the first videos I was putting out for the first 6 months, every video was called The Grind. It was like The Grind and then the title, like Grind 1. We got video, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I did it for 6 months. And every week I was putting something out. And it was like, it doesn't matter what I put out. To put out something, it has to be longer than, I had a strategy. It has to be like 15 minutes or longer. So it's 15 to 30 minutes every week, and it doesn't matter what I do. I have to put it out. Why? Because YouTube is the algorithm wants consistency.
Yeah.
So I was putting them out constantly. I was coming up with a decent thumbnail. I watched 10 videos on what a thumbnail looks like. I had this long-term strategy, and it's like, well, how did you know it was going to work? I didn't know it was going to work, but it doesn't take that long. And I didn't have anything else going on in my life. And
because I'm an ex-con.
Right. Like what's
it's either this or McDonald's.
Right, if it
I'm going to take my chances on this.
I'm not in any worse position. Like this takes an extra 5 hours, and I was editing the videos myself. It's like, and I got to that point, and I remember even saying, I can do this for so long, and then I am going to have to get to a point where I'll be out of material, and I have to start interviewing people, other criminals. But at that point, I want to have like a 3-camera setup, right? Mm-hmm. So I had by this point, people are reaching out to you. Mm-hmm. What can I do to help you? I like you. And I'm going on other podcasts because I knew if I go on other podcasts, I'll get more subscribers. I kind of conscript. I always think I'm conscripting their subscribers. And everybody's like, oh, well, you have a story. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you have a story because everybody's got a story. There are other podcasts, entire platforms that are based on the fact that they're starting a podcast or that they're starting a small business and they need content. There are entire websites that are dedicated that you could put up a 5-minute video about here's who I am. And it could be as simple as I worked at McDonald's for 6 years. I don't like where my life is going. I don't want to go to college for 4 years. It's not what I want to do. I dropped out of high school. I talked to my mom. I don't know. You just tell a silly a story that you think this is nothing. Yeah. And this is what I'm doing. And I'm trying to build my YouTube channel. And I've got 300 subscribers, and half of those are my relatives and friends. And I really need people to subscribe. And here's what I talk about on my podcast. I'd like to come on your podcast and talk about being a podcaster. Yeah. And if you put that out there, believe it or not, you'd probably get 4 or 5 different interviews from other YouTubers about your channel, and it would grow. And people don't realize that. You just have to be consistent, and it grows and it grows and it grows.
Yeah. What's really funny is, in human intelligence, what we call human in CIA speak, right? There's different types of intelligence. There's signals intelligence and measurements intelligence and imagery analysis and all sorts of different intelligence. But human intelligence, where you're actually collecting secrets from human beings, we call that human. And there's this concept in human where we say everybody's worth a cup of coffee. That's the same thing as you got to kiss a lot of frogs in business, right? So what we are taught and how we operate in the field is that we have to essentially reflect the thing that we're trying to attract. So we're trying to attract spies.
Right.
So we have to behave in ways that attract spies. That's the same thing you're talking about right now, right? If you want to launch a podcast, you can create a podcast about launching a podcast. And then what's that going to attract? It's going to attract a bunch of people who have thought about or are thinking about or are in the process of launching a podcast, right? So now all of a sudden you got all these people it's a built-in audience. Now, does that mean all of those people are going to be super useful for you? No, but who will be the people that become your future source of guests? Who will become your first round of guests? Who are going to be the people who will follow you for years just because they found you when you were small? That all comes from that first audience, right? It's everybody's worth a cup of coffee. You got to kiss a lot of frogs. And what fascinates me is that so many people are conditioned to think that they're supposed to be generalists. You're supposed to be good at everything. Right? You go to public school, you go to private school. You have how many classes? There's like 11 classes that you have to take a year. You take sociology and you take social studies and you take math and you take science and you take chemistry and you take algebra and you take gym and you take art. You're not good at any of them. Like you're getting exposure to all of them.
Right.
Specifically to make sure that you're not really good at any one of them. And if you want to get good at one of them, then you're supposed to go to college. And then when you go to college, and you want to pick your major, you still have to take a bunch of core courses before you even qualify to start focusing on your major. Why? Because college is a business, and college has learned that why would they let you take 6 classes and make you a Master of Fine Arts when they can force you to take 24 classes to pull out $85,000 from you, and you still get the 6 classes that you were looking for. People don't realize that if you can just niche down, if you can just focus on the thing that you care about and you reflect what you want to attract, you're going to have in just this rich, small pool of assets that take you wherever you need to go. The concepts that I learned at CIA have become the bedrock of all the concepts I use in business, which could be good or could be bad. I'm not sure which one it is. But this idea of a small, powerful asset pool has become invaluable to my business, because now every year that I succeed, dude, I get messages weekly from people who are sending me a message just to remind me that they've been with me since the beginning.
Oh, we get that all the time.
It's awesome, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's awesome.
I've been following you since such and such. I'm amazed at your progress. You're amazing. You're inspiring. It's like, inspiring?
Yeah.
Like, I always feel like how am I inspiring? But
your opinion
he's
of you,
inspiring.
right? Your opinion of you doesn't matter.
Right.
It's their opinion of you that matters, right? And let's be honest, one of the things that keeps us grinding every day is that person who you know is listening, that person you know is following, that person who you know is grinding through their day, wondering, am I getting stepped on? I feel like I'm getting stepped on. Am I being ignored? Is there something here I can learn from? If I make one small change, is that actually going to change my life? Fuck yes.
Right.
It will. Watch us make mistakes. Watch us take these steps. Watch us resist. And if you find this inspiring, go do it.